Out on a snowy night. This is the public hearing for community development, December 8th, 2022. Time is 6:07 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Filios and Duncan. Commissioner Brooks is on the phone. Are there any changes to the agenda? All right,
No.
Hearing none, I will poll for conflicts of interest.
I don't believe I have a conflict either. We do live in the home that our daughter owns in Cougar, Gulch. But whichever way this decision is made, I derive no economic benefit from it. But I thought I would disclose it just to be open at the same time. Thank you.
All right. We can go ahead then and get started with our one and only item, and this is ORA 22-0004, Cougar Gulch rezoning. So, David?
Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening, everyone. I'm David Callahan, Kootenai County Community Development Director. The item before you is a request for approximately 6 square mile rezoning. So far as I know, this is the largest rezoning the county has done in some considerable time, certainly since I've been here.
Bill, are you muted?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Somebody's not muted on the phone, so if everybody could mute, that would be great. Sorry, David.
No worries. Since this is a legislative rezoning, the rules of the process are a little bit different, worth mentioning quickly. One of the things that's different is in a legislative rezoning, it's fine for you to have talked to the public. And for you to talk with the staff about our opinion of this thing, because it's just like legislation in a way that if the state were doing it at the state legislature. Okay. So that much is easy. The item before you, we did fast track a little bit. It was at Plan Commission just last week on a special meeting on Tuesday. And if you had a chance to read through the staff report, you saw that the Plan Commission recommended unanimously in favor. And I'll get to that in more detail in just a moment. But I want to give credit where it's due. We hired Aaron Qualls to work as our contract planner on this case, and Aaron did a super fine job. And everything in the staff report is his work. So everything I'm about to go over, Aaron did for us. Among the things he did that's helpful is set out a general overview. I know you've read this, so I'm not going to go through it. I will back up in a moment and go through some of this detail just to give you a sense for what's in here. But mostly I just want to make sure you know that everything you need for this hearing tonight is in the staff report, including the required findings for approval. You know, Aaron's done an analysis of the applicable criteria. That's what you see on the screen here. And one of the things that's a little unusual with this request is since we're effectively downzoning, going from an agricultural suburban to the rural district, which is less intensive zoning district, there are some 80 parcels, which are the lighter color you see on the screen, that could potentially be made non-conforming with this. So you noticed in the staff report an answer for that, which is here, where we've actually worked in, under B, language that would fit into the Land Use and Development Code, that, just like other language we already have in this zoning district, which makes it unambiguous that people that have parcels that are buildable today will continue to be buildable in the future, even though they don't have 5 acres. And Aaron's even gone so far as to give you a draft motion if you feel comfortable with it. With that, I want to back up and mention back here under the charts. One of the reasons why we did these charts is it gives you an easy way to see the difference between this agricultural suburban and the rural district. And frankly, there aren't that many differences. What's in red is what's different. And since I know you've read this, I'm not going to belabor it, but just say that in my view, these are not the kinds of things that would be showstoppers for anyone. One of the things that came out at the Planning Commission hearing, and I think I'll go to a different visual at this point. I want to show you a map that we just worked up. And it also works into some new items that were in your packet just as of today and that are on the plenum before you tonight. 2 new responses we received, one in favor and one against. But all of the ones that are opposed are mapped on this page. And I wanted to just walk through them individually and explain them if I may. On the far upper right-hand corner, this large blue area with the dot or cross or X's in it is approximately an 80-acre parcel. Mr. Dobler presented to the Plan Commission that this is an area that he's been working on as a consultant for the owners to do a subdivision. He's informed us that the water would actually come from the aquifer, the Rathdrum Prairie aquifer, because the water district in this area has their wells in that area. They've been drilled, and that water's been coming from the aquifer for some considerable time. My vague memory is since that subdivision next to this project went in, which is some 17 or so years ago. So been there a good while, the water source is secure. So that's in large part why the Planning Commission was comfortable recommending taking this property out of this rezoning. But that's just their recommendation. You, of course, can choose to leave it in based on any evidence you hear tonight. Similarly, there are these next 2 parcels, also in blue with the X on it. In this case, these parcels are much smaller. The one on the north side of the road here is owned by Holler Living Trust, is 8.5 acres. And on the south side, it's 10.3 acres right here. And that's owned by Ms. Schwink, as I recall. And in both of these cases, my sense is they would like to be left out of the rezoning, but the Plan Commission didn't think there was sufficient evidence for them to recommend taking it out. We can dialogue about that later if you have questions.
Okay.
Moving over to this red area on the screen, that's owned by Eric Smith and his spouse. They sent you a letter that I believe you got by email. I also forwarded to you, printed out. And they're asking that you leave them out of this, in large part because they've been planning a subdivision for some considerable time, as I recall. And it's all spelled out in their letter. Moving down, this little yellow area is a subdivision that my staff, a request for a subdivision, my staff tells me we just got recently, and we've just determined is a complete application. Under those circumstances, we really must consider that vested under today's regulations, and so it won't be part of this rezoning. The final piece to discuss is owned by the Beeses. It's down here. It's also blue with the X's in it for the same reasons as the other property. It's 6.5 acres. They would like to be left out of it. The Plan Commission didn't recommend that. It's your call, ultimately. I'm just going back over the staff report to make sure I didn't gloss over anything. But I believe at this point we've covered really all of the hot buttons. Do you have any questions of me?
I do. If this rezoning were to take place and we left out the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish parcels, how many subdivisions?
Parcels?
Yeah, how many lots or parcels would not? See, how do I say this?
I get it.
Yeah, how many are we saving?
For X number of
Yeah,
additional lots.
Yep.
Well, roughly, in rough numbers, roughly 40 in that 80-acre piece, because, you have a 2-acre minimum.
Right.
And then you can do the math. If someone like the Beeses has 6.5 acres,
That's 3.
there you go.
But overall, how many are we saving for the whole entire thing? So not including those.
Oh,
Yeah, so if we do this, if we don't do this, right now, maybe they could do 100 more parcels. But if we do this, then they could only do 20 more parcels. Do you kind of understand what I'm
I
saying?
understand your question. It's a good one. I wish you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago. I don't know.
Sorry.
We haven't done the math.
Okay,
It's the sort of thing, I dare say, probably takes an hour or two using our GIS system. So
okay.
if it's pivotal for
It's-
you,
it's not
we can
pivotal.
circle back around and get you the information.
It's not pivotal.
I think suffice it to say it would be a significant
Yes.
difference.
Yeah. We'll use exact terms, significant. All right.
What
So,
else?
that is all I have right now. I'm sure more will come up.
Okay,
Chris?
thank you.
Okay, so, David, you made reference to lots that were approved, if you will, prior to December, well, prior to today. So are we saying that the 2-acre minimum is still in effect, basically, for lots that are already approved, pre-existing? Are we grandfathering? What are we saying?
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
they would be vested under the
Under-
under the prior zoning of agricultural suburban. So, yes, they would, still be able to complete their application, and if it's approved, then the minimum parcel size would be for those 2 subdivisions would be 2 acres.
Okay, so the people that are requesting they be exempted, who have 6 or 8 acres, why are we considering them as being exempted if in fact they're covered under the existing?
Only,
we're not. You got to separate in your mind. Good
Go
question.
ahead.
Separate in your mind the yellow area and the red area on that map I had on the screen
Okay,
from the blue areas. Blue
okay,
areas were the ones the Plan Commission heard and didn't find evidence to recommend taking them out, and they're still in the rezoning.
okay.
they don't have a subdivision application or other permit application pending.
So unless
Fair
you
enough.
take them out, they're not going to be able to develop at the density they would like.
Understood.
Does that answer your question fully?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I was going with how many parcels are no longer going to be able to be developed, and I'm still not saying it right. It's, the maximum. What were the maximum amount of
Right.
parcels? And
Got it.
now the maximum amount of parcels are this. So that's kind of,
I get your question. I just
Yeah.
can't answer it without
sure.
looking
And,
at
and,
each
I, and I
parcel
don't
and
need
doing
it,
the
but
math.
that's why I asked the question, because of these parcels who say they do not want to be included.
Right.
So,
Sure.
okay, Bill, questions?
I have no questions.
Okay. All right, are you ready to get into some
Yeah, let's go.
testimony?
Yeah.
All right, so first I will call for anybody who wants to speak on behalf of the petition. Okay. Just state your name and you have 5 minutes.
Do you need name and address?
Well, yeah, I mean, I assume you're in the proposed area.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson Duncan. Mr. Filios, Mr. Brooks online. My name is Carl Meyer, and on behalf of the Cougar Gulch community, I thank you for at least entertaining the proposal as given. This has been about a year process, and I must give kudos to the Community Development Office, and in particular, Mr. Callahan, and the Planning Commission and yourselves for at least considering this. The constituency you see out here, we've all had discussions many times over almost this past year. If it hadn't been for Lynette Brown and all the people on the ground talking to the constituents, we wouldn't be here today. As you've heard many times, we are probably beyond the 80% mark. And you saw by the map how the constituents, our neighbors, are trying to present the facts to you. Up until this point tonight, we've been talking about territory. What we should have been talking about is water. And the whole problem we have is that when the water isn't available, the people are struggling. You know, bringing in water continuously and the cost for that, having to drill a new well. There are some property owners around their third well in a matter of, not even a decade. That is the whole discussion here. We are, and me personally, I'm not trying to prevent anybody from wanting to develop. They just have to understand that we are trying to invest in their future. Without water, all our properties are worthless, and that's not where we want to be. So the struggle here, and I understand why people may want to oppose, I have 6 acres myself, and I don't want to divide it only because I'm not going to be giving somebody or selling to somebody something that may be of worth value if there is no water. So just have that under consideration. Relative to the 80 acres that were requested to come out, my only request would be if they don't want to be within the, from agricultural to rural zoning, then I'd request that the commissioners look at them guaranteeing that they get water off of the aquifer. In other words, if they want to have 40 parcels, fine. Make sure that water comes from the parcel, not from well water, because that's just going to make the neighbors south of them struggle more for the water that they would need. And that's what we're after. So I hope that message is clear as we, appreciate moving into the Cougar Gulch area. We want to keep that rural spirit, and we want to make sure that everyone who is there can maintain that for their future and their children's future, or however they want their legacy upheld. That's all I have.
Just one question. How long have you lived there?
We bought property in 2015, and we developed in 2017. And it took a year for that, so we've been living on the property since 2018. Okay. And since that time, it's a very good question, thank you. We have seen every year with water struggles. And we have had to self-ration down to less than 100 gallons a day. And for us, it's fairly easy. There's 3 of us, but we have families in the neighborhood, have 8 children. So they have big families, and they struggle even more than we do. And it's just not fair to them to have that continue in the future.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
I'll just do everything in one post.
Okay.
All right, James Casper, opposed, wishes to speak?
Thank you, Commission members, staff. I just want to say, first of all, I feel compelled to say I respect everybody's opinions.
Okay.
Especially
Maybe you can just state your name for the record.
James Casper.
And then do you live in the Cougar Gulch
Yes,
area?
on High Ranch Road, actually directly adjacent to Eric Smith, who is also requesting.
Okay.
So just to say, I want to respect everybody's opinions, especially those who would like to voluntarily change their own parcels in terms of the zoning. I personally, for admittedly selfish reasons, do not. And only because of that, and because of the situation where this is one of the last opportunities to impact the situation, I feel compelled to make as serious a case for why it's not necessary as I can, not necessarily directly wanting to combat other people's decisions for their own properties. I want to just provide a very small acknowledgement. I have great respect for David, but I disagree with the amount of time between the 2 meetings. I think it does not allow enough time for those of us who were unsure whether or not this process was moving forward, to actually take the time to research and add our comments to the situation. We bought our property in 2018. We live in a camp trailer. I'm building my house on my spare time. So I have only lived there for a few years, but one of the first things we did was drill a well because we were aware that water was a precious resource and we didn't know. It was not a guarantee how much water you would get on any specific parcel. We're lucky in that we got a 45 gallon a minute well. In fact, most parcels directly adjacent to us have 45 gallons or more. 45, 60, and 60 actually are the three other parcels directly adjacent to us. So in terms of the area considered here, I think that perhaps it's too wide. I'm not sure that you can localize the water supply and the impact of an individual new well to the entire 6-acre area. I think that a smaller scale might be more appropriate and effective. The general usage of water is more impacted by secondary uses outside of a home, which would be things like irrigation and otherwise. The Idaho Water Resources defines the average gallons per day of a house at about 600 gallons, whereas irrigation and otherwise is in the thousands of gallons a day. Larger parcels actually might be more attractive to other uses as opposed to residential occupation. The problem with zoning as a tool to control water is it's not directly related to the water resources use. The county zoning doesn't actually impact what you can and cannot do. The state regulates the water usage rights. And especially with the beneficial use exemption being at 13,000 gallons per day for individual domestic wells, it's maybe not even connected at all to say that changing the zoning would actually impact the amount of water usage taken out in the future. In fact, without any further inducement from zoning, the majority of development pattern is not less than 5 acres. 80% of the parcels are going to be conforming at more than 5 acres right now. So changing that development pattern wouldn't be impacted at all by the zoning. The current development pattern is in parcels of greater than 5 acres just by natural development in the area. That could be specifically related to the topography, especially on a parcel like ours. There's not really multiple lots worth of building area available. There might be a second one, which is one of the things that we're interested in preserving, again, selfishly for ourselves. But the idea of having 5 different parcels with reasonable functional building plots, building sites, is probably not accurate, and that's somewhat what controls the general development pattern in the area, as opposed to the right. If the right of building a 2-acre parcel was what drove it, it would be more common to see those 2-acre parcels existing and applied for. So in my opinion, it's not necessarily the thing that controls the access to water and might be unnecessary and unfortunately not useful in benefiting the future water use. Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, sorry.
How much acreage do you have?
9 1/4-ish.
Okay. And then are you on as one of the marked out sections?
No, because with travel, there's one reason why I think the short timing is, I respectfully wanted to admonish that, is holidays are an issue for people, and not being able to be here and provide comment for the other meeting, I would have had I been in town and been able to do that. So it's more just a timing and accessibility issue for me.
Okay. David, can you pull up the map? And can you go point to your parcel?
Sure. We actually bought our parcel from there, so it was a second parcel we owned.
Best you approach it from the other end if you can.
Yeah,
there you
there you
go.
go.
Do we have the,
We are this parcel
the laser pointer? Okay.
physically located west and north of Aerospace parcel.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have got. Bill, Chris, questions?
Did I hear you correctly? Did you indicate that most of the developed parcels anyway, in Cougar Gulch are already at least a 5-acre minimum?
According to the staff report, when you create a new 5-acre minimum, there would only be some 22-ish%, if I'm reading their numbers correctly, 80 out of 355 parcels, that would be less than 5 acres as it exists today. So the majority of parcels are already more than 5 acres in size.
So a little under 25%. So I think your point, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that the incremental gain or trying to meet the objective of preserving the water for the area is basically, it's almost a moot point because less than 25% of the parcels are really going to make any difference.
As of today.
As of today. Okay. Thank you.
No, you're good, thank you. Okay, Steve Circle, neutral, may wish to speak? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Steve Circle. Address is 3712 South Stats Road, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I came here tonight to kind of get a feel for what the proposed is. I've been a Kootenai County resident since 2002. Moved my family here, and we finished raising our family here in November of 2002. We moved here, and we've been in Cougar Gulch since then. As a consulting engineer since I moved here, I've developed a lot of those properties, as well as all over the county and in other counties and other states. I put neutral because I didn't really know what the application was. I hadn't been following it. Just could have been busy, to be honest with you. But came here tonight, and I would like to turn that. I'd probably stay neutral, but as I feel like it'd be good to speak that water is an issue, and in years past, when we had to do a lot of water adjudication up there, we could preserve those rights. And but that doesn't matter. I mean, wells do run dry, and there's no doubt about that. Development really is dependent on three development elements. That's access, that's wastewater, and of course it is domestic for water. Now, this 6-acre map here really spells out what it's nice and flat on the screen, but what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of this development, a lot of this area of land here can't even support a 2-acre lot. So I think, you know, it's a good, wise choice. I'm glad it wasn't any less than 5. I'm on a 5, and I would never, and we bought it for that, and I think most of the people here behind me bought it to keep that privacy and such, so that's all I wanted to say. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, Christie Circle, may wish to speak? Nope, okay. Yeah, I'm good. When I can't pronounce something, I'll give it to you. Rich Brodka? May wish, okay. And I should say in favor.
My name is Rich Brodka, and I live on Meadowbrook Loop. I have a small business. I'm a well witcher. And I mentioned this last time I was here. Within a quarter mile of my house, 4 of my neighbors had to drill new wells. Existing neighbors, they all had more than one well, and there was a new person that drilled the well, but his well dried up. And that's up on top of the Meadowbrook. The section in question there, remember, there's only so much water in the ground. The new section in blue over there, that's actually in front of my house that they want to develop into more parcels. So, who draws the line here? Do the residents say something? Does the county say something? We know that everybody doesn't mind growth, but at what cost? Are the residents supposed to suffer because the county wants revenue? Trust me, there is only so much water. Some areas have a lot of water, some areas don't have any. Your neighbor could get 20 gallons a minute, you can get 3. And that's just the way the world works with water and groundwater. That's my business. I know how it works. So until somebody does something and takes this seriously, all these neighbors are going to be drilling new wells. If we got a year like we did 2 years ago, great for the well drillers, but not great for the community. So that's where I stand. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I don't have any questions.
Thank you. All right. Susan Meyer in favor, does not wish to speak. And Carl Meyer in favor, wishes to speak. Oh, you already did. Okay. Put you in front. Okay. Okay. Travis Irvin in favor, does not wish to speak. You do? Yes, you can.
Sure.
It was interesting, one of the earlier commenters, my name's Travis Irvin. I live off Reynolds Road here in Cougar Gulch.
Thank you.
It was interesting saying that next to the 6-acre parcel there in the red, I live actually right up the canyon. And my well is still working, but when they built a couple of new homes in there over the last few years, I had a spring that was used as a water source back in the 1800s, and now it's dry. So it may not seem out of realm, but is it just a coincidence that when they developed down that canyon, now my spring's dry? So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
questions?
Questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Karen Irvin in favor, does not wish to speak. Peggy Albertson in favor, does not wish to speak. And if you've changed your mind, folks, just give a shout out. David Beach in favor, does not wish to speak. Paul Hakala, okay, in favor, does not wish to speak. Audrey Hakala in favor, does not wish to speak. And Doug Albertson in favor, wishes to speak.
My name is Doug Albertson. I've lived at 7862 West Clementson for 40 years. I guess the interesting point, we're all kicking around the idea that there isn't much water. And truly, in the 40 years that I've lived here, that's been proven correct. A year ago, we put in a sonar device to continuously measure the static level of the well. And we've dropped about 100 feet since the well was drilled. I did a study for this ongoing project looking at the rainfall over the last 10 years. And that study showed that rainfall has diminished over the last 10 years. And that's commensurate with the number of wildfires that we've had in the area. We're seeing a drop in precipitation. The area where we live is decomposed granite, and the water that we get out of it is in fissures. And as some of the participants here have stated, wells have run dry. In my case, I still have a few feet of water. The neighbors, on the other hand, 2 of them have lost their water and had to drill new wells. On the corner of Meadowbrook and Clementson, wells were drilled and other wells went dry soon after. So we're all tapping into similar fissures, and if you're at the same level getting water, somebody else that's at that level getting water may not get it anymore. So I guess what we're looking at is 2 things. One, there's a limited amount of rainfall that's, it seems to be diminishing. And 2, by the look of the sonar sensor in my well, and there's other people that have put in the same sonars, and they're seeing similar situations. So what we may be experiencing is an actual depletion of the quantity of water in our area. We may be overusing it right now. Okay, if we can diminish the density of population, in other words, reduce the number of wells that are drilled, we may have more time with the water that is available in this area. When someone drills a new well, comes into the area and is used to having water in California, wherever they come from, there's nothing to say that they can't use that water for irrigation, build a swimming pool, just use water. I mean, nobody's going to tell them, hey, you can't do that because you're going to run my well dry. We're all in this together. And we've got to realize that we have a limited resource and we've got to conserve that resource. And, you know, you look at a room full of indigenous people, and I hate to say that because indigenous people have got the short end of the stick from historical forever. The people that are coming in are legal aliens, to put it in simple terms. And, you know, forgive me if I'm stepping on anything. But we've got a problem in the country right now with the amount of resources that we have, and we're complaining about people coming in and using our resources, and how are we going to support this influx of people that are coming in, not just to our area, but to the country itself. We can kick the can down the road, as administrations have done forever, or we can be proactive and say, hey, we know we've got a limited resource. Let's conserve that resource so the indigenous people, if you will, living here can continue to live here. We've got a beautiful land. Unfortunately, if we don't have water, it's an uninhabitable land. And you people are indigenous as well. So you've got a vested interest in protecting the area here. And that's what I would ask. You know, please help us conserve the resource that we have by diminishing the density that could happen in this area. Yeah, thank you very much for the privilege of speaking here. Any questions?
Thank you.
No questions. Thank you. Charlie and Janelle Greer. In favor, does not wish to speak. Royce Fringle, in favor, does not wish to speak. Lynette Brown, in favor, wishes to speak.
Do I push this button?
Yeah, you're fine. It'll pick you up.
Hi, my name is Lynette Brown.
Agreed.
Sorry. My name is Lynette Brown. I live in the area here on Heine Road, and I have been involved in this project for probably over 3/4 of a year now. I just wanted to give you a little bit of history on the petition itself, how it started, you know, the process around it, and that, you know, that might help understand like the effort we put into it. So we had some meetings at our Grange, our little community hall. Mr. Callahan was there. Actually, Commissioner Filius was there for a community hall meeting. But we would pack that room probably 2 or 3 times. We've had meetings there on this subject. And one of those meetings, we were looking for advice on, well, what can we do? How can we be proactive? What can we do to help ourselves? And some ideas came up, one of them being, well, let's put together a petition to see, find out how much support we have. Is it just something that a few of us think, the ones that show up to these meetings, or is it an area-wide thing that people want to see happen? So we got a list from the planning department of all the parcels in this zone, the 6-acre zone, and it was all very nicely organized. We took that and we divided it into street level, and we got all of our community together, and a lot of the people in this room, they actually took their street, they took a petition, they knocked on doors, they called their friends. It was a very large effort. We did this for probably about 2 months, maybe 2.5 months. And, in an area like ours, very rural, there's only so much door knocking you can do. There's enough people that aren't living there, first of all. There's enough people that have closed gates, you can't get in. But we did our best, and we got over a super majority, what I like to call it, of signatures. But we didn't stop there. We wanted everybody in that area to know what we were trying to do. So a couple of us got the legal owner registration from the data we got, and we wrote hand letters to every single person that we didn't touch on the petition. So if we got, let's just say, 200 signatures, we wrote letters to the other 100 or the other group, offering them the opportunity to sign or not sign. So a lot of these people don't live in the area. We mailed them to their home residences in wherever they lived, Post Falls, Hayden, Spokane, Montana, wherever their address was. And, some responded, some did not. So we feel that we've reached out, and for as far as notice goes, we've had this as a topic in our neighborhood for 6, 7, 8 months, longer if you go back to some of the other battles that on subdivisions that have gone on. So I just wanted to say that we turned over every single rock to find every single person. We got, of the 353 parcels, we got 265 signatures. That's over the supermajority level of 75%. And if we would have continued going, I think we would have gotten more. We just had a time limit that we had to turn this in to the planning department on, and we had to kind of stop. But we still have people even today reaching out and say, how do I sign? And we had to say, well, sorry, we turned it in. But that's the history of the petition process itself. On a personal level, I just want to mention that we live on 40 acres, and we're the 4th owner of our property, and we're on our 4th well. 2 are totally dead. The 3rd one we're on right now is dying, and we drilled our 4th one, and we do 0 irrigation, just that's only for us to live on and, in the household. We have a few animals, but, not enough to really impact. So it's just my husband and myself, and we're having on our 4th well. So thank you.
Question.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I just wanted to state I am in favor of the complete zone, no carve-outs. I am opposed to carving out any of the parcels except for the ones you have to statutorily, they're vested because of they've already filed. But that's my position on it.
Okay. And so it's only 88 people who you didn't hear from, or just 88 people didn't sign? So I guess, are there any people possibly who do not know that this is happening?
I can tell you we've done everything we can do to reach obviously people have moved in and out of the neighborhood since we stopped collecting signatures. We mailed, if we didn't talk to somebody, we mailed physical to their home or wherever their legal address is, if they don't live in the area, to the property owner. We mailed them a letter, we mailed them a petition, we mailed them the history, and allowed them the opportunity to be aware of what we were doing.
Okay.
Madam
All right.
Chair, if
At the end, Carl, we'll get through everybody first, and then we'll allow you to do that. So, okay, that was mine.
And this also includes all the corporates, the LLCs and the,
Sure.
you know, Pristine Ridge. And for example, we found who the registered owner was. We found who their agent was. Every single parcel we touched. So, in
But
one way or another.
just not everybody responded.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
All right. All right, Jim Brown in favor wishes to speak.
She took all my thunder. The only thing that I want to add that she didn't say was of all the people that we ran around and got signatures from, I believe there were only 2 that said they weren't opposed to it, they just didn't want to sign it.
Okay.
Of all the people that we went to their houses, I went to lots of houses down little dirt roads and through the community. The only other thing I was going to say is, yes, we just drilled our 4th well, and we went to 630 feet to get 10 gallons a minute. And our 3rd well is, if I'm filling up all the water for the animals, I run out of water. It recovers, but that's our source. We have 43 acres, and we're not doing any irrigation whatsoever, and we just want to live, and that's, you know, we like our space, we like our community, and we want to keep it that way.
Thank you.
And a lot of people don't have the funds, the resources to go dig another 630-foot well for $50,000.
Sure. All right, Marie Boyd in favor may wish to speak. Okay. Lee Lorenz in favor does not wish to speak. John Boyd in favor may wish to speak.
I'm John Boyd, we live on 4281 Stack Road, and I just want to confirm what others have been saying. We're fortunate that we have a good well, but my neighbors to the west, my neighbors to the east, my neighbors to the north have like 3 gallons per minute, and they've told me they've run out of water. The other thing I want to mention is that we have 21 acres. We had about 10 when we first moved there. We had a right-of-way through our property for another 10 acres that the owner was telling me he was going to develop. And we looked right down on it. And we had the chance and we bought it. So we have that space. And that's the type of area we like.
Okay.
Any questions?
Thank you. Okay. Andrew McComas in favor does not wish to speak. John Loeffler in favor may wish to speak.
Good evening. My name is John Loeffler. I live on Cougar Gulch Road, and we've lived out there since General Sherman vacated our premises. Actually, it's 1998. We've been out there. We moved here from Colorado. It's a privilege to live in Kootenai County, and water is the key issue. Everyone has addressed that. But as a side issue, the reason we located here is Colorado was very much in the business of destroying itself by doing some of the things that we see happening here in Kootenai County. And since we've lived in Cougar Gulch Road, when we first moved out there, you could sit in the middle of the road and eat your lunch and nobody would bother you. Now you take your life in your hands if you do that. And it's not because of the rabid deer. So this is a consideration as well. I've been watching the development up on Meadowbrook. There were other parcels I knew that were very large, 100 acres or better, and certain people were waiting for their relatives to die so they could subdivide it. They were just salivating at the proposition. What happens is they do that, and then they go away with their money, and as other people have said here tonight, we're stuck with the consequences of that, not just financially, but just more and more traffic on the road and everything else related to that. So I do believe that needs to be taken into account as well. It's secondary to the water issue, which is key. But it's the reason we located here from Colorado almost, well, actually, what, 27, 28 years ago. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Joyce Randall in favor does not wish to speak. Jennifer Shanley in favor does not wish to speak. Jason Shanley in favor does not wish to speak. Thomas, yes.
Yeah.
I'm Jason Shanley. I live at 1231 South Academy Court, just off of Clemenson. And mine is really kind of a question for Mr. Callahan. I believe that it was rezoned to 2 acres in the 70s, late 70s. Do you know the number on that?
When it was rezoned?
Chair, do you want me to respond?
Yes, please.
So far as I know, the zoning has been in place since '73. However, Pat reminds me, there was a change in the zoning density. And I believe that was 20 years ago. Do you recall?
About around 2004 thereabouts.
So
when it was actually the minimum parcel size was actually raised from 8,250 square feet to the current 2 acres at that time.
So another down zoning
Right,
occurred then.
yes.
Okay.
But originally it was rural.
No, to
No.
my knowledge,
No.
it's been this.
They changed it the other way.
Always,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always been this since 1973.
Okay.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Thank you. Thomas Whitehead, in favor. Would you like to speak? Sure.
Yeah, we moved in, Thomas Whitehead, and we live on Reynolds Road, South Reynolds Road, 1415. And we moved in, and the people, the original owners, they had drilled a well that was 125 feet. The static, at the time, level was 35 feet. That well went dry. They drilled another well, it was 250 feet. That one went dry. They extended that one down to 400 feet, and we've only got about 75 feet left out of that 400-foot well. And as more and more houses get put in there, it seems to go lower and lower and lower. And I can't afford $50,000 to put a new well in. That one property down there that they drilled, what was it, about an 1,150-foot well, and got 3 gallons a minute, and they want to put four places on that. That's ridiculous, and the county shouldn't let them do that, because as I remember, they had to get 5 gallons a minute 5 gallons a minute as far as what the minimum had to be, and they're at 3 gallons, and they want to put 4 pieces of property there now? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Paul Becker, in favor, does not wish to speak. Brian, oh boy. Altiria? Okay, Altizer, that's a Z. All right.
My name is Brian Altizer. I live at 5667 West Meadowbrook Loop. I don't actually have a water issue at my property, but the big development that went on just recently with the 4 parcels that the other gentleman was referring to brought to my attention that there are a lot of my neighbors who have a lot of issues. And I do see the truck going by my place all the time. It has a big water tank in the back. And I feel for that guy. So my position, I would ask that you guys really seriously consider this, because there's obviously a problem, and all of us have made it clear that there is a problem. And irregardless of what the law says, let's try to be proactive and avoid having that problem. Because my understanding is first in, last out kind of thing, so you could shut other people off if you actually were impacted. And I would hope that you guys would try to consider that, let's avoid shutting people off or having one person over another.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions?
Fine, thank you.
Linda Becker, in favor, does not wish to speak. Michelle Clark, in favor, does not wish to speak. Joel Clark, in favor, does not wish to speak. Travis Moore, in favor, does not wish to speak.
Sure.
Yes. Sorry, Travis?
Yes, Travis Moore.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Travis Moore. I'm at 4808 South Stack. I bought 100 acres from the previous ranchette Cougar Creek development. Going into buying it, I knew there was a water issue, and it looks like it's been going on for a while, so obviously this is an unresolved problem here. It's kind of like a tragedy of the commons. So, I mean, at this point, unless the city wants to bring water in or something, I just paid 50 grand, 600 feet, and I only got 5 gallons a minute. And I consider myself lucky, so I just wanted to say that, like, I think the whole issue here is water. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kathleen Nierenix. In favor, does not wish to speak. And Sandra Nierenix, in favor, does not wish to speak. Annette Knapp, in favor, does not wish to speak. Tom Walton, in favor, does not wish to speak. Okay.
Good evening, Tom Walton. I live on Stack Road. I think enough's been said about the water. I'm not skookum enough to speak on it, but I do want to address the rural America part of it. And as one of the younger residents of Cougar Gulch, who I hope I can live here for many, many, many years, one of the reasons that I bought property and moved into a pre-existing home purposefully was I want to live in a rural community. I want to live in the rural community that all of these people sitting behind me built. And I can't tell them how much I appreciate what they've done out there. And these little carve-outs here that want to do their subdivisions, well, to be honest with you, piss on them. I've lived out there and I don't want it to change. So this is your opportunity to actually stand up for the little guy. Also, I can't afford a new well ever. And actually preserve some rural America. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jody Walton, in favor, does not wish to speak. Peter Goddards, in favor, does not wish to speak. Jessica Goddards, in favor, does not wish to speak. Ivan and Susan Klemenach, in favor, does not wish to speak. All right, Tom Kuntz, in favor, does not wish to speak. Douglas Sellers, in favor, does not wish to speak. Marcus and Lisa Manning, in favor, does not wish to speak. Anybody on Zoom, David?
Well, they can't talk if they are, so you need to ask the people
on the right. Okay, anybody on the telephone that wishes to speak, it's going to be hard to control, so.
Yes. My name is Gordon Dobler. I'd like to speak.
All right, 1 second. You'll need to mute Zoom. I'm sorry, not Zoom, but YouTube. Yeah, so if you're, no, Gordon. If Gordon wants to speak, he's got to mute YouTube. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm not on YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Go right ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Gordon Dobler. My offices are in Hayden, Idaho, and I represent Pristine Ridge, who owns the 80 acres that was up in the northeast corner of this proposed zone change. While we're generally neutral on the zone change, we're opposed to having the 80 acres rezoned from 2 acre to 5 acre minimum. And as staff have alluded to a little earlier, and we testified to the Planning Commission, we understand the water issues and the water concerns, but feel that we won't impact that area because this 80 acres is currently in the service area of the Ridge of Cougar Bay water system. That water system draws its water from the Spokane aquifer. There are 2 wells down in the Riverstone development, right behind the theater is where the wells are, and they pump from the aquifer. Each well is capable of producing 1,000 gallons a minute. and it's pumped across the river along 95 and up Espinazo. It serves the Cougar Ridge subdivision, and as I said, we are also in that service area. So our development will get water from the Spokane Aquifer. It won't be affecting the water up in this area, and we respect those concerns, but we also respectfully request to be removed, for that reason.
Okay. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie O'Hare in favor, does not wish to speak. Ryan O'Hare in favor, does not wish to speak. Diana Nottage in favor, does not wish to speak. And then there's Mel Ray Nottage, is that right? In favor and did not mark, does not wish to speak. Okay. Anyone else on the telephone who wishes to speak? Anyone on the audience who didn't fill out a yellow sheet who wishes to speak? Okay. Thank you. All right, at this point, I think that we are ready to end public testimony and enter into deliberations. Is there a motion?
Yeah, so I will move that we do in fact end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Filios,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right. So this is where it be changed from a participation sport to a spectator sport. So this is between the three commissioners, and we are still allowed to ask staff clarifying questions. So, Bill, do you want to go ahead, go first? Your thoughts?
I'd rather not.
Okay. Chris?
Okay. Okay, I guess this is somewhat an unusual situation because I can readily understand what's going on because we're experiencing some of it ourselves, in that the 10 acres that we're situated on has both a private well and a community well that services 10 lots, and I believe some action had to be taken on the community well over the past year to make sure that we could still provide water to the residents. In addition, over the past year, our private well pump failed, and we had to replace it, whether that was due to, just old age or the fact that the water level had dropped, who knows. What is interesting and what I found, as the land has settled in our area, and I think largely due to the lack of rainfall, and the land has settled, I can see lines that are running through portions of our land where at one time the prior owners were able to irrigate. Well, that's impossible. Not only can we not irrigate, we still can't figure out where they got the water from. And there might have been creeks or streams running through the property at that time. That's no longer the case. So the gentleman who testified about the decreasing rainfall, I think we can see the effects. The other thing, too, to the broader question, is that if we don't preserve the resource, everybody loses. And my primary concern is not the next person that's going to move in. My primary concern are the people who already live here. And I think that the water situation and shortages are real. People's wells underproducing, people having to re-drill wells. It's interesting that when we look at a fissure, and we can identify a fissure as being productive, but it can only be productive to some extent. How many people are tapping into that fissure? And as we go forward, and as more development is accommodated, we don't know that. And so unless we preserve the most precious resource we have, I don't think there's any way that we can sustain a quality of life, and a rural quality of life at that, which incidentally is indicated and in fact encouraged in the comprehensive plan. And as such, I am in favor of the rezone. So that's my position.
Okay. Bill, did you want to go last or you want to go now?
Oh, I can go now. I tend to agree with Chris. This is a very difficult situation, but it's very necessary that we address it now instead of when everybody's on a water truck. And I think if we wait until next year or the following year, the problem will become more acute. So I agree with Chris.
Okay, thank you. I am in favor of the rezone. However, I do want all of the carve-outs on this as well as Mr. Casper's. And the reason being, when you buy a piece of property, you have a bundle of rights. And essentially, this is taking away rights from these people who do not want to be included in the zone change. I'm very, very sensitive to that. Honestly, the zone change wouldn't need to happen at all because all these people who signed the petition just wouldn't have to divide. That's it, problem solved. But the community has come to me and asked for a rezoning. So I do want to grant the rezoning, absolutely. But I really think, especially for the 80 acres who has a separate water source, and then the other people, obviously the vested people, and then that leaves 4 parcels who are not under vesting, but they do not want to be included in this. So I would I would support the map that is shown with those parcels carved out plus Mr. Casper.
David, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You said that Eric actually prepared a motion?
Oh, Aaron.
Aaron, forgive me. Okay.
It's in your packet.
Yeah,
It's really nothing more than just, I recommend, or you approve based on the staff report, and then you have to decide, like Leslie just brought out, if you support these, removing these other parcels.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Can you put the map back up?
Which?
Yeah, it's
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I have a question for Pat. Somebody indicated, one of the testimonies we heard suggested that in any motion that, or at least in a motion to approve the request for the zone change, that we stipulate that the owner of the 80-acre parcel does in fact pull the water from the Spokane Aquifer. Can we do that, Pat? In a motion for the, or is that not legal?
In the motion, I would just, if you were inclined to want to exclude the 80-acre parcel from the change in zoning, I would just leave it at that.
Okay, go ahead.
And actually, the same goes for any of the other ones you wish to exclude. I would recommend that the Smith parcel and the Smart parcel, which is the one in yellow, because they have submitted applications for minor subdivisions, that they both be either excluded or regarded as vested under the prior zone.
Regarded as vested.
So then my other question is, since there could be these people like Mr. Casper who don't even have any idea, is it possible to entertain in the future a zone change, essentially maybe a reversal, if someone were to come to us and say, wait a minute, didn't know for whatever reason, could we consider that later?
Yes.
Any person can always
right.
ask, you can always authorize a rezoning.
Okay. So I will take a stab at this, and if you guys don't like the motion, we can change it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I move that the Board of County Commissioners, after consideration of the criteria and relevant standards of Idaho Code and Kootenai County Code, approve and adopt ordinance ORA 22-0004 Cougar Gulch rezoning with an attached map that carves out the indicated parcels plus Mr. Casper's parcel.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Aaron, I think erred. We don't actually have the ordinance number.
Oh.
Yeah, you would just be referring the case
case number?
Yeah,
Case
ORA 220004 is the
Right.
case
Okay.
number.
Thank you.
Okay.
And as long as as long as you change ordinance number to case number, then I think
Case
that's
number, Jennifer.
Got it.
Thank you.
So is that sufficient then?
Okay. So I will second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
No.
Commissioner Filios,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right. That concludes the information, and I guess,
Just for the record,
Yes, Pat.
I do not consider the slight modification from the Planning Commission's recommendation to be a material change that would necessitate a second hearing before the board.
thank
So I
you.
just wanted to get that out on the record.
Thank
Okay,
you for
fair
the
enough.
clarification, Pat. 7:17, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.